Welcome to Tracy Erin Talks, where functional medicine meets personal development. You want to be living your best life, but the overwhelming amount of health information out there is confusing, and the way you think about yourself is keeping you stuck. You know you are meant for more. As a women's health specialist, my aim is to simplify and equip you with the tools you need to be beautifully balanced from the inside out. Welcome back to Tracy Erin Talks, where today I want to talk to you about something very personal to me, a very intimate and personal story that is about a diamond ring. Now, a diamond ring is generally that symbol of love and commitment that a woman receives from her fiance before they are to be married. And then perhaps followed up by a wedding band, and thus the marriage begins. And it is a mark, a symbol, if you will, of their marriage throughout the years. Well, I don't know if you would believe me or not when I tell you this, but I've been married for 24 years, and I just only 10 days ago received my very first diamond ring. And I want to tell you the story about that. So, in my practice, let me just step back a little bit. Why am I deciding to share this very personal story out into the interwebs of the great expanse of the podcast land? Well, part of my practice is one, to be transparent as a woman, and two, I really believe in the mind, body, and soul of a woman as she experiences a healing journey towards becoming her most optimal, vibrant, and healthy self. So I am so much more than clinical. I love the tests, the protocols, the supplements, but I also love the thought patterns, the emotions, the style, the surroundings that goes into making a woman's life its fullest feminine expression. So I thought to myself, I have shared this story more times than I care to admit over the last 10 days since putting this ring on my finger. And too many people have stopped me and said, wait, why is this story not on your podcast? And I thought, okay, well, here goes something intimate and personal. So, um, just to begin, where do I start with this? Let me just start at the beginning. So, my husband and I got married when we were very young, fresh out of college. In fact, I was still in college when we got married. He had just graduated in May. We got married in August, and I had 1 year left to complete before I could graduate with my first Bachelor of Science degree. And as we were getting married and planning this wedding and looking into our future, we knew that we would be heading overseas as soon as I graduated into the wild west of the lands of Niger, or Niger as Americans say it, West Africa, as Christian missionaries. We were going to be joining a group of friends and colleagues that were going to be based literally in the bush of the country and surrounded by people who were so poor and so neglected in multiple ways that it never felt right to me to be looking at my future in that way and spend what seemed to me an extravagant amount of money on a ring that was simply going to be worn on my finger. I imagined myself holding babies that I didn't know would survive the night, or meet families who couldn't feed their children with millet and milk and cattle and goat, whatever their meat supply was, because they literally were living in such extreme poverty that it was a drastic difference from life in America to what I was about to be experiencing. And I just didn't want to have something on my finger that I felt like was extravagant is the right word, or like too luxurious or too expensive. Or, when you're dealing with life and death, it just felt like that was not the image that I wanted to bear as I was becoming a missionary. It felt way too frivolous to spend any kind of money on that, let alone my husband and I really could not afford anything like that at ages 21 and 22, fresh out of and inside of college. We were barely scraping by as it was, waiting tables, teaching swim lessons. You remember how it is, odds and ends jobs that just helped put our life together. And being extravagant with a piece of jewelry was just definitely not on that radar. So we ended up spending 2.5, 3 years or so in the country of Niger. We enjoyed our missionary work. It was very challenging. And I have told a little bit of the story in one of the first 3 episodes of this podcast. And maybe someday I'll go a little bit deeper into what life was like living in Africa. But for now, this particular episode is about this diamond ring that I can't stop staring at on my hand and not life in Niger. So let me just fast forward a little bit. That just really sets the stage for how we initially got married. But then, shortly after we returned, I went back to school and became a registered nurse. I had seen too much overseas. I had seen too many people suffer. My own husband suffered with his health. I suffered with my health. Everybody that was on our team suffered with their health. And the people on the ground there that were making the biggest impact, as far as I could see, were people with medical training. And so I knew as soon as I came home, if we were to ever travel overseas as missionaries again, that I would want to have a medical background. So I went back to school and became a registered nurse. And during that time, babies started to come. Then we found ourselves overseas again for the summer in the country of Tunisia to explore whether or not we would live out there. We had one child at that time. And shortly thereafter, we're back in the States, moving to Texas, and more babies just continued to come. We literally were living in a barn dominium before barn dominiums were cool. Now they're like, you know, very luxe, but the one that we lived in was literally truly a barn. Outside of our kitchen window was a tractor and hay bales and all the farm supplies, and out the front door was the hay field. And it was a beautiful, very magical time of life when you're young and you're having babies. And, money is just not on the radar and you're just getting by. And, it's that time of life where sort of all it takes is love. And we had that in spades. So, as far as I was concerned, we were the richest people on the planet. Again, a diamond on my finger felt so extravagant. It felt like such a a symbol for other people, but not necessarily for us. We had matching bands that we used for our engagement and continued to wear for 2 decades, really, that were just a platinum, simple, hammered band. They were matching. It was actually a his and his. I just had a very small size, and we were very happy with that for many, many years, decades even. And it wasn't until I'm gonna skip some time here, we had found our way leaving that hay farm, starting our own business, living in a different part of Texas, and eventually moving to Middle Tennessee, where my husband then entered the corporate world of healthcare administration. And, life still seemed a little bit tumultuous. We're a homeschool family, we're one income, and we're running a small business on the side. And everything is really just about being smart about our finances, providing for our family, giving our children good opportunities, and homeschooling was always a principled approach. It wasn't something like, well, the public schools are terrible. I might as well do it myself. No, homeschooling for us was a no brainer from the get go. For one, we loved our children and we wanted to be the main influence and force for them. So we wanted to give them everything that we could in terms of character formation and teach them the things that we wanted them to have. And I wanted to be around them. I knew that if I shipped them off into a school bus every single day and I saw them in the afternoon, that there was little hope for me to actually look at these children like wet cement or a ball of clay that I could actually sculpture and shape and structure and form into the vision that I had had for our family. And as part of creating our family legacy, homeschooling absolutely needed to be a part of that. in order to maximize that desire and that goal for our family. So, along the way, we're still just saving money and buying our first house and being modest in all of our approaches. And it really wasn't, and I honestly never expected to ever desire to be in a place in life where I would want to spend money that again felt extravagant to me on something like a diamond ring. I really want to hammer that home. It was not as though there was something unfulfilled in me all these years. It was really, I would say, low and or no priority. There's so many other things to be rich in. Having that form of a symbol on my finger was just not on my radar. So, we continued to, life goes on and family is growing and children are getting older. And it wasn't until the last couple of years, I would say, until after I was surfacing towards the tail end of my own health journey when I began to feel like I had a new lease on life. When the period of time where suffering was my modus operandi was I woke up with symptoms, I went to bed with symptoms, I managed them in anxiety and fear all day long. And it wasn't until I came to the other side of that, which is actually why I'm doing what I'm doing as a women's health specialist in functional medicine, trying to help women who were like me, stuck in this endless pit of chronic illness and symptoms and not knowing where to go, who to turn to, and the medical system absolutely not helping me. That's how I ended up doing what I'm doing now. Well, all of that kind of shaped my whole feeling of realizing that I've got more life to live. God has spared me and given me a second chance. And I felt so thankful and so grateful to be on the other side of that, to have found healing, to have gotten my memory back, to have dropped brain fog and fatigue and all of the bizarre symptoms, nerve pain, tingling, head pressure in various parts, stomach issues, joint pain, all kinds of weird limitations that I used to deal with on a daily basis. When those finally became behind me and a part of my past, I began to see my life in a new way. And I began to think about, if I could do anything, what would I do? If I could live anywhere, what would I live? If I could raise my children in any sort of way, what would I do differently? I just started to dream again. My brain started to open. My mind started to expand itself. My thinking began to transform as I literally saw a second chance at everything. Instead of the lights dimming on my life and me feeling like, "Oh, no, I wonder when I will ever feel better," I began to feel amazing every single day, and the lights could not have shone brighter. Hope is such a magnificent form of medicine, and I began to receive hope in just enormous amounts every single day, and the way I looked around in my life started to change. So I began to dream about things again and think about things in a different way. And one of them was I began to think, what would be nice? We will have been married for 20 years. What if we circled back to that idea of becoming a little bit more traditional and finding a modest diamond ring that we could enjoy someday? And that sounded, I started to sit with that thought and that idea, and it started to feel really good. And my husband and I would talk about it, and it was a quickly became a source of tension because now our children are growing and their financial demands and sports activities and schooling options and life in general is just getting more and more expensive. And it felt like, when is there ever a time to set something aside to indulge? And it began to be an idea that was on the back burner. Well, I, a couple years ago, joined a membership. As you know, I've talked about this in other podcast episodes, called the School of Self Image. And the School of Self Image is a wonderful membership that is purely dedicated to my own personal growth. And I have benefited from this membership in drastic and beautiful ways. And one of the projects that we do is every January we design a magazine cover and we choose a word of the year and we put on the magazine cover titles of articles that you might find in that magazine. And you put some thought into what those articles might say. And so, just by looking at the cover of the magazine, you might get a snapshot, a window into what that woman's life is like. Well, for this year, I chose the word connected. And I had my title article was How a Diamond Nearly Gave Me a Divorce. Now, just like tabloids and other magazines that you might see at the grocery store, the the name of the article is meant to be attention grabbing, right? I mean, it's meant to like intrigue and bring curiosity. And so I chose those inflammatory words on purpose, even though did a lack of a diamond ring ever really drive me to the point of wanting a divorce? No, but symbolically wanting something and not having it and not being on the same page really began to be a source of discontentment in my marriage. And I allowed that thought and that desire to mean something very important to me. And the message that I began to form and create in my mind, things like I would actually like a diamond ring at this point in my life. We are at a point in my life where I could afford it, where we could save for it, where we could make this a priority, and now we're not. And what that story began to say to me were things like, I must not be worth it. Our marriage must not be worth celebrating. I spend money on everybody else and every other thing except for me. And I began to create stories and messages in my head around the lack of that diamond ring to mean something that was actually very discouraging me for a long period of time. So this is all part of the story, and an important part of the story because it's all a chapter in the book that yet has to be finalized into what this diamond that's on my finger now actually means to me. So, in designing that cover of that magazine, my husband read the the journal, the magazine article, and we began to talk about, well, maybe this is the time to say, is there ever a right time? Will you ever be ready? Will you ever have enough money? Will you ever find that perfect thing? What if we were just to go for it? Maybe now is that right time. And one day we were in a part of Nashville where there is a furniture store that I like to visit periodically. And we were there one day, and right next door, there is a store called Genesis Diamonds. And when we were finished at the furniture store, my husband said to me out of the blue, what if we just walk next door and actually take a look? And I thought to myself, well, that sounds surprising. I didn't expect that that idea would come from him. Um, historically, my husband is definitely the one that is a little bit more level-headed, I would say, when it comes to things like, um, just going for it or the adventure or the hashtag YOLO. That's generally my role in the relationship, and I tend to think often in terms of he being the brakes and me being the fire. And so we have to compromise and find our way through that as, all couples have their own differences. Well, it was very encouraging to me for him to say, "Why don't we just go take a look?" And I got so excited we walked into that store. And as we walked around the displays, I was just shocked at the number of options that there was out there. And we met a salesman, Brandon, quickly, who was like, Let's get some diamonds on those fingers. You must try them on. I need you to know what they feel like." And I remember seeing one out of the corner of my eye that I really was attracted to. And when he put it on my finger, I thought, it is amazing to me that we've been married almost 24 years and I've never put a traditional diamond ring on my finger. And it was very thrilling and very exciting and all of the things. Well, that trip, that day was really just to walk in and see what was out there. So there was not a chance we were going to be buying anything on that day. But Brandon, being the good salesman that he is, created a wish list for us and wrote down the size and the things and all the interests, the likes and the dislikes, etc. And after that visit, we went on our merry way. Well, throughout this whole spring, we thought about it, and there was one ring in particular that I just could not get out of my mind. And so um, I text Brandon and ask, "Hey, is there any specials or sales coming up? We'd like to come in and look at that one ring in particular again." And he had let us know that, the month of June, they're running their annual thing and come in before the end of the month if there was anything that we wanted to get because it was a once a year type thing. And I simultaneously had this amazing opportunity to take a trip to Spain for a wellness retreat. And I, one night, approached my husband and said, "Wouldn't it be lovely if I could set aside this $9 silicone band that I've been wearing for so many years, this CrossFit leftover, those styles that are meant for like weightlifting or gyms or whatever. They're indestructible and they're cheap. And my son had worked at a place that made them. So I had so many and so many different colors throughout the years. And what if we were to just get a really simple band and I was to take that to Spain? What if we marked this moment with a type of conservative purchase? It wasn't going to be the big diamond engagement ring, but it was going to be just one of those bands. And then later we could save money and get that engagement band. And he thought that that was a great idea. So we went into the jewelry store again and we made an appointment with Brandon and he showed us the ring and and we let him know that I was going to be leaving town in a couple weeks and I would need just this simple band. And sadly, he let me know that that was not enough time to get it ordered and custom fit to my finger. So, going to Spain with the band that we had wanted to get to eventually match the bigger diamond ring was not really a possibility, and we needed to come up with something else. So, we left that day thinking we will have to come up with a temporary solution, but if we do want to get the set that I had my mind on, we should definitely do it before the end of the month. So we ended up finding an alternative, something delicate and feminine and fragile, and something very lovely and a low investment piece. And that's what I ended up going to Spain with. However, the night before that trip, it was near the end of June. So we needed to make it into the store to place our larger order. And while we were there, I had it on my finger and he had let me know that oh, well, I had let him know I had my colors done and I was really dead set on a yellow gold setting. And he was kindly letting me know that the ring that I had purchased was not really the best fit. I mean, sorry, no, I hadn't purchased it yet. The ring that I had chosen was not really the best fit for a yellow gold setting. And he explained all these reasons. And I started to think, oh, okay, maybe we're back to the drawing board. Maybe we're not going to be getting this diamond after all. No big deal. I guess I'll just keep waiting. And he said, "Just hold on a second. Are you willing to try something new? Are you willing to open your mind a little bit?" And so he came over with a different band and a different ring and he put it on my finger and I was like, "Oh, that's pretty." I mean, it's not what I have in mind. It's nothing like I came in here looking for, but I do like it. This, okay, okay. And it started to grow on me. And he began to build this ring on my finger with a eternity band and then the band with the larger stone in it and then another eternity band. And I showed my husband and instantly the look on his face was, "That's it." And I looked at it and I looked at it and, these are big purchases. You want to be sure. And I, in my gut, in my heart of hearts, just knew that what I had on my finger was the right one. Even though, in a jewelry store, it's not the size that fits your finger, it doesn't have the final stones in it. You really have to do some mental gymnastics to actually picture that final product. So I had to do some imagining, but still, I just deep down felt like this. This is the thing we've waited for. And we were able to pick out the final stone for the setting. And we made the purchase, got it in with that June sale. So we felt pretty good about that. And the next day, I flew off to Spain. Now, I had to wait 6 weeks for this ring to come in. And 10 days ago, we got to go into the store and slip it on my finger. And the second that we did, I cried. It is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. It's the most beautiful ring I've ever seen. The most wonderful thing I own. I feel so lucky, so special to have this on my finger. All I can think about is all those years, all of the transitions, not being able to afford it, not even wanting one, then wanting one, not knowing which one, then wondering what we won't buy so that we can buy this. I mean, all of the things that go into the story behind this ring make it 1000% worth the wait. And I wish I could show you a picture on this podcast, but that's just not how podcasts work. So I have to say that over the last 10 days, as I go into grocery stores or clothing stores, I have yet to not be stopped and have somebody say, "That is beautiful," and want to take a second look. And I can't stop smiling. It must be because I'm glowing. I cannot stop smiling at this most beautiful thing on my finger that represents so much love, so much commitment, so many emotions. It is so symbolic to me now that it's just very, very special. So I feel so blessed. Like, how did Brandon know? How did he look down into my soul? And oh, at the time, I meant to say, at the time when we were trying to think about which ring we would go with, he let me know. He said, just so you know, everyone comes in for that ring. That ring is on trend right now. And instantly it was a turnoff to me. I was like, well, I don't want the ring that everybody else has. But as he began building this other ring on my finger, he was like, nobody will have this. And even that thought alone just appealed to my desire to be unique, to be one of a kind, for it to have been special and all these things. So anyway, just wanted to share that little story with you about how this ring on my finger came to be. And, I just want to say that it's not about the money. It's not about anything other than the symbolism, the feeling, the meaning behind the thing. And, I spent a lot of my adult life sort of poo pooing the idea that it was anything special or that it needed to be anything special. And I just came to a place where I realized that it actually was important to me. And it took me a while to admit it, first to myself and then to my husband, and then to fully allow myself to desire something extravagant, especially as a homeschool mom, especially as a one income family, especially as a mom of multiple kids. It's like there's only so many things you can spend your dollars on. And there was a message that I was sending to myself throughout the years that ultimately landed somewhere in that genre of I must not be worth spending the money on, even though I never said that out loud, even though my husband would never say that out loud. It's like that unspoken message became a theme. And that type of theme is and can be destructive in unseen ways throughout time. And that's definitely what I began to recognize what was happening to me. And so it feels like one big scary leap. It feels like, um, you know, just diving off into the deep end in a lot of the mental and emotional ways. And if you're if you're relating to this, you're relating to this. If, maybe this personal story isn't for everybody, but if it is for you, then you get it. And then we're like soul sisters. So I'll love hearing from you someday when you say, "Oh my goodness, that I had the same experience, but it was about this." Because it's not about the ring. It's not about the money. It's not about the diamond. It's not about the thing. It's about coming to a place in your life where you can say yes wholeheartedly and you embrace. It's about that vitality. It's about embracing. It's about choosing yourself. There's bigger themes here. And so, anyway, there's just a little tidbit, little little look into my personal life. If you see me in person, let's chat about it, and I will be grinning from ear to ear, and I hope that you can smile with me and I smile as I smile with you on your triumphs and the things that you've overcome in your life and the things that have brought you deep abiding joy. So I look forward to whatever those are in your life, whatever those symbols are for you, whatever those milestones are for you. I hope you can see yourself a little bit in this story of mine. But anyway, thank you to Genesis Diamonds, especially to Brandon, and most of all to my husband, who knew all along that I was worth it and that we waited. I'm so glad we waited for the right one. And now I have a family heirloom to pass down to my 5 children. I wonder, they're going to have some serious arm wrestling matches to find out which one is going to be the lucky recipient. But it's fun to imagine having something to pass on to them, which means so much, has just a lot of story behind it. So anyway, this is just part of that story of being female, of being chosen, of being balanced, of being beautiful, of being all the things that God intends for our lives. So, and life abundant also. There is so much to be thankful for. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I can't wait to see you on the next one. Until then, friends, stay beautifully balanced. Thank you for joining me today on Tracy Erin Talks. I hope you found today's episode enriching to your life. If you enjoyed today's content, would you consider subscribing to the podcast and leaving a review? That simple act helps this podcast get into the hands and ears of many more women just like you. Remember, anything you want and do not yet have will require a new set of beliefs, thoughts, actions, and a new you. I am honored to be on this journey with you as we wholeheartedly pursue true health and wellness in mind, body, and soul.